So this morning we are joined by Rob Thomas, Senior Partner Manager at Styla in our Talking Performance series. In this episode, we're looking really how to improve customer experience for online shoppers in this rapidly changing environment. So I think really, Rob, to kick things off, can you just tell us a bit more about what you and what Styla do?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much, Tom and ThinkTribe, for having us on. Styla are a content management platform, which essentially was built to allow brands to realize their creative dreams for their e-commerce site or shop without the heavy lifting, coding requirements or development expertise required to do this without a platform like Styla. And it currently spans two products. We have Styla CMS, which has been around since 2015, which overlays and enhances the existing e-commerce setup, so essentially between the header and footer of the website, and helps enhance the ability to create, curate, and publish content on their existing shop system. And we also this year, quite excitingly, launched Styla Frontend. So Frontend is a PWA-powered, super fast front-end solution, which essentially replaces the front end of the website, allowing customers to pursue headless architecture. And we are essentially then the creative element that allows them to build a beautiful website. We use an inbuilt PWA, which essentially means we're using a progressive web app to fund and to help mobile browsers experience a really, really good, fast-paced, fast-loading, and a static HTML generated process, which means that the page is loaded before they arrive. All the content is ready and the browsing experience is better, faster, and ultimately feels more invested in. So having just launched Styla Frontend, we're obviously looking at a load of different things in the marketplace and things that are rapidly changing. One of those is Google's Core Web Vitals, which I know you probably know more about than I do, Tom. So in a nutshell, we've launched Frontend to help brands with brilliant creative dreams and want to create great brand experiences and customer experiences, and essentially allowing them to produce the content they want in a fast-paced, fast-loading environment that's going to convert more customers. So that's kind of in a nutshell what Styla does.
Great, and the massive crossover. You already mentioned Core Web Vitals. There may well be a separate video series on that from ourselves in a few weeks' time. But we're quite clearly talking here about customer experience and what I'll pose the question to you. But now that product quality isn't the main reason that consumers may do business with a brand, today's standards, it's much more important, for example, to deliver that overall customer experience to your customers. We at Tribe, we work with people to enable that fast and error-free user experience, multi-channel. You talked about PWAs lending themselves to the mobile, mobile-first browsing experience. And what we look to do is we look to ensure that products are buyable and can be purchased at all times, not just at peak, without any performance degradation. That's just our sort of meaning of, our meaning of customer experience. But actually, from your perspective, what does customer experience mean to Styla?
Absolutely. I mean, you raise a really interesting point about product quality. I spoke to an agency last week who actually had done a survey on the quality of product images. And the findings were the better the quality of the product images, as if a product in your hand, a product on a site, it's one of the main drivers for consideration of purchase, which is something I didn't know. So really, really exciting to understand that, it's not just about having a great looking website, but, your images and your products, they need to be great as well. But to answer your question, what does experience or customer experience mean in e-commerce? It's a really interesting point for Styla because we have two customers. We have the end user, the shopper, the buyer, ourselves. And we also have our customers, the users, the e-commerce users, the business owners, or the marketers driving these brands and businesses forward. So let's talk about those two in isolation, if I may. The customers that we think of generally when we're building a website experience, of course, are shoppers, buyers. We need to engage them all the way through using compelling content that drives an objective outcome. In this case, with a retail site, it's a purchase, or with a brand, it's a consideration or an educational journey. So the way that we view experience for customers is that that process must be followed from their first touch point on the website, which might be a landing page. It could be a blog post. They could be researching. They might not be ready to buy. What Styla helps brands do is drive customers down this funnel, as we call it, the conversion funnel of a customer experience. And we help brands at all points in that journey create compelling, accessible and digestible content that changes regularly. You know, if you've got a campaign or if you've got an event coming up, we've all just gone back to the pubs and shops. So it's a really, really good time to discuss that. It might be that your restaurant brand wants to show the new exciting seasonal produce that's come onto the menu. We can help them do that in hours. So it's getting people onto the site. It's converting them down the funnel and committing them to a call of action. It might be a purchase, or it might be, for instance, a login, a sign up, whatever that may be. But taking a step back, we've also got to consider our customers, the brands and the retailers, and making them agile, being able to react to changes in the marketplace, new products, new launches, new events, new sales, and making that content production experience very fast, very easy and intuitive. So that it's not just your CTO or your e-commerce manager with 25 years experience who can code with the left hand while he's making a coffee with his right, or he or she. We want to be able to make that end user completely span the business, a marketing executive, someone who's just come in for a 6-month work experience placement. All of them can use Styla to produce content. So we need to make that process slick, easy to use, intuitive, and accessible for our users. So two main streams. There's the customer, the buyer, us, me and you. Let's make sure we convert. Let's make sure we like the site experience and we come back and shop again. There's nothing worse than losing a customer once and losing them forever. And the other aspect that we need to cover off is our end users and how we make their day-to-day life better. We lower the total cost of ownership of content production. We add to the ease of use and ultimately make them want to publish content. If it's difficult, brands and retailers won't do it. Changes cost time and money. So we need to make that process better for them.
I think that's really interesting. It's really important, and we hear this quite often, to be able to quickly modify your website, your content, and get the right content in front of the right people at the right time. Mm-hmm. And it sounds exactly, with what you do, that you're enabling that to happen.
Yeah.
From our actual research ourselves, we have found 84% of consumers or customers will abandon their purchase if their online experience is poor. So how can you create the best experience for your clients? What is actually involved?
It's a very broad point. I think we could be here all morning.
We can if you want.
we might have lost our viewers by that point. So I guess maybe I could touch on like 3 major pitfalls or things that we see, things that drive us to speak to a client, recommend a solution. One thing, and it kind of harks back to what I was talking about, SEO capability, right? You're driving customers, you're investing as a business in driving traffic to your website. One thing we see is when you have a great landing page, but it's a subdomain that sits off your main website, you're basically spending twice as much to drive half as much traffic in some cases. We see blogs as an amazing way of driving, people that might not come to your site, but could be very loyal, valuable customers. One thing we see a lot is content isn't updated on a blog, right? And it might be your only touch point. It might go out in an email. It might be something that, look, I'm not going to buy this climbing equipment, but because I saw a really compelling, brilliant email, or I was searching for something else and the rankings on their SEO showed me a new site. I thought, well, let's have a look at their blog. Let's learn what they do as a brand. And if this is old, if it's not particularly well updated, if it's not shoppable, or it sits on a separate subdomain, I might never find the original website. I may never actually get to transact with that business. So one thing we see a lot is when customers can really improve and optimize that funnel, it's like a back door. If the back door is creaky and it looks like no one's been through it in 20 years, no one's going to walk into your business. It's the same approach on a website. If all of your touch points to attract customers are nicely laid out, they're interactive, they're educational, and they're frequently updated, you can see as much with one customer I can't name. We get 3 times as much conversion through their blog than we do on their main site. And we actually added shoppable elements to that blog, so that if you're learning about this new, it's for instance a base layer, a technical base layer, or a technical garment, you can shop on the product, convert straight to basket, and we see that drive 3 times as much conversion, which is absolutely amazing for that brand. The other thing we see a lot is when customers have long streams on a product list page, but they don't populate that. Let's say it's an endless scrolling page. It's not populated with relevant content about the brand. It's just an endless list of products. And I mean, I don't know about you, but my attention span is probably pretty poor as a buyer. If I'm scrolling and there's no call to action, there's no look, these are great products, but did you know this had been through 16 pairs of hand to create this piece of beautiful porcelain? Or, did you know that these are all made with recycled fibers, resourced from, I don't know, recycled fishing nets, stuff that kind of goes, wow, okay, this isn't just a list of products. I'm not just considering the products, I'm considering the brand, the messaging, the story. And we all know that stories are much more likely to make us convert as buyers because they're compelling. They're memorable. They make us come back to a website. So we do something called, we implement something called modular content, which is the ability to break up long streams of product blocks, and essentially populate relevant contextual or educational information. And we find this reduces bounce rates, especially when you've got customers that aren't necessarily at the consideration phase. They are just speculating, they're browsing. It reduces the bounce of these pages and also helps customers convert through to that next phase of consideration. The next thing we do is actually helping customers increase their page speed scores. Now, this is something that comes up and up again and again, especially with the changes that Google have introduced for those rankings and page speed scores that affect their organic placement within Google search. So we use a few different things that are inbuilt into Styla to help customers and brands improve those scores, reduce excess CSS, make that customer experience slicker. Ultimately, if you feel that it's better invested in, if you feel that when you shop on a website, the customer is cared for, the page is optimized for their experience, you're more likely to come back, you're more likely to enjoy it. I can name a couple. When I was buying DIY and building supplies for the house, it's just done some renovations. It's not an area that's always very transparent. You feel, look, this is really clunky, this is slow, I'm really struggling here. And if you're busy, you're working, you've got loads of stuff going on, you're the first person to probably just go, you know what, I'm going to go alternative route, different, part this, I need to go and do this a different way. So what we do is we reduce excess code, which helps a page become quicker and slicker. We can do things like caching images in our content delivery network and then deliver them into the website statically, which also helps them pages load faster. And the other thing we do is very simple things like make a video a thumbnail. Don't make it load as soon as a customer lands on the page. And by doing a couple of very simple things that inbuilt to the platform, we can really optimize those pages for customer experience. And especially if they're browsing on mobile and they might have, say you're in the rural Herefordshire and you've got 3G rather than 4G, that's exactly where those optimizations really help you browse, help you spend, and help you feel a little bit more cared for as a user. So those are kind of 3 things we see in the market right now. I could go on for hours, I won't. But yeah, that's kind of what we see as optimization, really.
Likewise, I could talk about website performance for hours and hours and hours, but there's a lot of, you're talking a lot of the same things that we talk about the page speed delivery being important to the end user by optimizing components within that page which actually make it load fast for them, because we know the frustrations. And you mentioned DIY. I think we've all seen that through lockdown all those months ago, where it wasn't in many cases that, well, in many cases it was that product was unavailable, but it's the frustration of navigation through some of those sites and the slowness of the operation. I was in the same boat. I find myself relying on just searching through Google, page 1, page 3, 4, trying to find the products that we need that were actually viable.
Yeah.
And I think it's about, in many ways, it's the prioritization, for a lot of retailers about that customer experience, because it is such a huge factor. And interestingly, you've mentioned mobile. What is your view on mobile versus desktop when it comes to prioritizing customer experience? Does it give a retailer a competitive edge, for example?
I think if you'd asked me that question 6 months ago, I'd have a very different answer. And weirdly, we did a webinar in December, which touched very heavily on this. The figure at the time was that by the end of 2021, 57% of EMEA Europe-wide browsers would be using a mobile device predominantly. Now, sounds a bit broad, but I think what it really means is 57% of people would use mobile as their first most frequently used device. That probably made sense then. But looking at the year we've had and the way that brands have optimized and evolved to try and prioritize their online marketplaces, it's probably, and based on some customers we've spoken to, it's probably near 80%. That's colossal. As a shift, as a sea change from last year or the year before last, when I would never have dreamed of shopping on my mobile. I didn't have a very good mobile phone. Let's be honest, it was an iPhone 6S or something, so that makes me a dinosaur by comparison. I've just upgraded to a one with 5G. So as a buyer, I've probably changed immeasurably through that period as well. But yeah, I think mobile has become increasingly more important for brands. That's also affected a lot of our German brands that we work with. So where bricks and mortar was their staple, then their e-commerce site became important. Those guys are reporting even higher numbers of mobile browsers. And actually, one customer we had a really interesting demographic, which they're over 40s, 90% of them, because they have login and repeat business, they have these metrics. 90% of them use mobile devices first or tablets. You'd asked me that 6 months ago, I would have said, God, it's got to be the other way around. 90% on browser, 90%. So yeah, in answer to your question, if optimizing mobile experiences is not at the top of your e-commerce agenda or your business agenda, it doesn't matter if it's e-commerce or not, it's got to be part of your business agenda now. Of course, it brings into play all these other exciting things like SMS updates or, tracking in real time or, increased email nudges to try and get people engaged. If the phone's in their hand and they can go, yeah, you know what? Okay, great. I will look at that product again. I will follow up on that product education, or product research that I was doing. If you're not optimizing mobile right now, it's going to be, it's going to cost you money in real time because when people come to the site, they see it's not optimized, they'll go to a competitor. They'll go and find an alternative. And as you said, so many good brands are optimizing their websites right now for mobile. You can just go and find someone else. So it's a really, really crucial point. I can't stress it enough.
I think it's really interesting because we start to see, retailers are really embracing how we can join up the customer journey from mobile, not just mobile to desktop, but mobile to in-store. Yeah. How you can be, tracking somebody who are browsing and have added items to basket, but when they go in store, different technologies are actually saying, well, how can we actually create that into a conversion? How can we convert something from mobile to a physical purchase? And there's lots of new tech coming out around that and joined up thinking, but it is still all about that overall customer experience, and we see now the focus isn't necessarily on the homepage. Homepage is very important in terms of performance, but it's things like product landing pages. It's where the traffic is being driven that needs to still have that element of performance, still being fast and error-free, fast image delivery, high quality images, and it all comes back to the overall content speed, and it links quite nicely actually back to what we said near the beginning, all to do with the Core Web Vitals coming out, something I know is very high up the agenda for a lot of retailers, both from marketing and e-commerce. I'm sure they'll be putting pressure on the IT teams to make sure that these the pages are all running fast by using some of the great technologies we've been talking about today.
Absolutely, and one for you, Tom. I mean, we talked a little bit about home pages and product landing pages. Where do you guys? I'm really interested to understand this. Where do you guys see the biggest failing across the board? Where do you think the process falls flat? Because we talk a lot about page to page content similarity. It has to be consistent. It has to be the same wherever you go. It doesn't matter if even if it's a different domain. .en .de, .fr. It doesn't matter where you are. The content experience needs to be the same. Now, that's something we can do. Where do you see it fall down with your customers or with your potential customers you work with? Where are the areas where that becomes the most strained in your view?
There's still a disparity between mobile and desktop performance.
Okay.
There's a lot of talk about mobile first, but we see across a broad range of retailers that a user journey in Chrome is running faster than a user journey in terms of download speeds on mobile. And yes, we have N-mile to consider. The difference you said between 3G in Herefordshire and yourself on your new 5G fancy phone, right? It's going to be a lot faster.
Which I don't get signal on at home, by the way.
No, nor do I. But there's still those sorts of discrepancies. There's also, it's we need to focus in on actually what does customer experience look like in a performance world.
Mm-hmm.
And it is about the full end-to-end customer journey. There's still a lot of focus on page load speeds,
Mm-hmm.
but actually, is it more important that your whole page is loading fast, or is it above the fold? Is it what the customer sees? Is it time to interactive? And it's understanding from a business perspective and prioritizing what are those metrics which you need to focus on. We would always say that a page load speed is not a good indication of a customer experience. It's the end-to-end customer journey that you need to look at. How fast can somebody navigate through the entire end-to-end journey? Navigate searching, browsing, adding to basket, and checking out. And at each step of that customer journey, there are areas which can slow that down. Quite often it will be to do with third parties, and the dependencies in this modern world on those third parties themselves. So as I say, I could talk a lot longer on end-to-end customer journeys, but I think for today, I think in the time that we've got, that should wrap things up quite nicely. So Rob, I do thank you very much for your time. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and hopefully speak very soon again.
Thanks very much for having me on. Have a good week.